The rowing just looks good. It really looks good. But the thing is that Joscha Holl wants to reach the national team. And he says he's got major problems with how he holds his hands, and that this keeps him from having higher stroke rates. Joscha is a lightweight rower. He's fit, he's very fit. But he also has got some problems with not becoming a lot faster on the erg. So he does a 6:23 right now and needs to reach a 6:10, and he just can't make that step. Let's start with the technique part. Before I talk about what Joscha can do better, I want to talk about what he does well. And I will feature some things he does well on the positive and on the negative side, because on the surface, a couple of things he does look excellent. I mean, that the he rows marvelous, and that 99% of all rowers would probably give, 3 legs and 5 arms just to row like this is apparent. But if you want to make the national team, if you want to be, make it to the Olympics, Paris, which is a long way, there are a couple of things you better improve. And he's aware of that. So yes, there will be things that he needs to change. All right, now part 1, let's address the good things. A good thing here, and you probably saw that, is the way he catches the water. You see there are no randle foils attached to the blades, so it's pretty difficult to stabilize the blade at the catch. What he does well, however, is to stabilize the hand. So one of the most important things to look out for is the vertical stability of the hands. So in other words, once the blade is in the water now and connection sets in, your hands should not go up. Should not be the case. So what you want is a pretty stable motion, a pretty stable horizontal motion without a lot of vertical alteration. This is important. And the thing is that you can actually fake this, and this is what Joscha does. It may not sound apparent, but if you target the wrong things, you get the wrong outcomes. But more on that a little later. From a visual perspective, it looks very good because the hands do not alter height. And we can see this. See? Almost identical. Awesome. Really good. All the way to the finish. And even at the finish, there's barely any blade washout. It's pretty excellent, But there's one thing that looks a bit, I don't know. Why is that happening? You see this, how the blades move out? It's clean. But what do you do if you have bad weather? Okay, now it gains some height. Now blades move off the water. It's another thing that works excellent here. Blade control is good, but this is not super clean. You don't have enough space just to feather now, square, my apologies. So you should always be able to square anytime you want. And now as you go to the catch, the question is how does this blade go up? What's the body doing? I don't know. We're going to talk about this later. But the way he approaches the catch with the blade, I mean, this is beautiful. There's not much to say. If you look at this and whoop, super clean. The stroke rate we have here maybe mid-20. Another thing that looks very good is the way the shoulders remain stable at the catch. You see the shoulders do not move up. Pivot is early, but probably not too early. Or maybe it is. Let's talk about this a little later. So we had 3 very good things. First of all, the catch. The blade control at the catch is phenomenal. This is something we can all look for. Second thing, hand stability once Joscha is connected. Beautiful. And second, and then third, the way he controls the upper body at the finish. You see there's a full force connection. One of my favorite words here. A full force connection between the abs and the foot stretchers. Which means that Joscha sets up his body well. There's not much that could alter this. It's very stable in the water. That's a very good job. Good. Now let's talk about the fine differences between pro, what Joscha is, and super pro. So first of all, the stroke rate is not a race pace. So it's a pretty controlled pace. Point number one, there is a rhythmic problem. And this is nothing you can change intentionally, at least not a lot. But I can establish the fact from my point of view, there is a rhythmic problem in terms of the relation between recovery and drive is not right. There's too much body motion in the boat and too little boat motion. And there's another thing I would like to point out. There's too much body motion through the drive. And you see at this point right here, there's always come on, there's a true rip. It's not like a fluid motion where you open the upper body and you open the hip angle right here. This is not the case. It's more like in German you would say Hauruck. It's get it done, you know. Rowing doesn't happen like this. You can't do that Hauruck 35, 40 times a stroke. It doesn't work. So in my humble opinion, there's too much force buildup at once at about this stage here, which is slightly too early. Yes, the oar bend is beautiful. So right there, the oar bend, absolutely excellent. But I would like to see the oar being under full load here as well. And this is not the case anymore. We can establish a third issue that Joscha clearly has. And I will explain later how to resolve most of these issues with 2 or 3 little tweaks. The third issue is the timing. I've been working on this with a couple of my athletes at the recent Zoom live sessions we've done. It's the engagement points of time. So when do you engage which lever? Essentially, there are 3 levers you have available. So the first lever is the legs, strongest, but also the most lethargic and the most overused at the catch. I happily make a video about this, why you should not kick hard with your legs at the catch. It destroys your entire drive, so it messes up everything. The second lever you have is essentially the trunk. Joscha's upper body position is very good. And Joscha also said in his voice message to me over Instagram that he's been working on hip mobility, hip connection, how to set up the hip. Joscha, well done. Looks excellent. Great. And lever number 3 are the arms. The problem is if you engage the upper body too early and with too much energy, you basically shorten the effective length of your drive. Because when you open the upper body, what you essentially do is you create speed. Your oar handle speed, and this could be too early. And by this I mean the following thing. Let's make this pink here. So I'm talking about the angle between your upper body and your thighs here. And this angle basically, it's called alpha. This angle here is largely responsible for the speed you have on your hands, because your leg drive of course accelerates the hands, but the moment you open this angle alpha right here, you start to gain more momentum. First of all, second of all, you change your body setup, and this quickly accelerates your hands because you move the lever at a very low point at the hip angle. So opening the hip to thigh angle, hip angle here, it's called alpha, is essentially responsible for creating more speed on your hands. I don't want to go into deep right here, because if we go into deep, this will be a 45-minute video. It's going to be too long. But I'm going to cut it short here and just say, don't speed up your hands too quickly, because if you speed up your hands, you create an excess of energy on your blades and within your body at a point of time where the boat is not quick enough to handle this. The acceleration potential you have of a displacer, which is nothing but that, what you call every given ship that just blocked the Suez Canal, that's about the same type of hull we have in the racing shell and in a container ship. So you cannot, of course you can accelerate it, but you cannot accelerate it, first of all, endlessly. So there is a certain speed that is just maximum hull speed. And secondly, the amount of acceleration you create in the water creates always an exponential amount of resistance first. So if you accelerate the boat too quickly in the water, the amount of resistance you get from the water surrounding that hull is infinitely greater. So you have to be wise. You have to add speed of your hands at a point of time where torque is not so much needed and where the boat is already pretty quick, so that you can add more force, more momentum with opening the hip angle alpha at a point of time where there's a pretty good relation or ratio between faster hands, quicker hands result in boat speed. If you open the hip angle at a point of time where Joscha does, you basically get an energy congestion. Because right now, Joscha is creating a lot of force on the blade, and we can see this. Just follow that, you see how much this oar bends right now. Let's go a bit further. Now you see it pretty well. This is good, you want this, but you don't want it at all times. The question is, can this force be transferred into boat speed or not? And it most likely cannot. So what happens is that the body has to absorb the excessive energy because the water is not willing to. So the oars absorb a bit with bending, but everything else, you've got carbon riggers, you've got a carbon oar that doesn't bend a lot. The boat is carbon, so there's not much bending going on here as well. So the question is, where does the energy go? It travels right back into your body. And it doesn't really matter if you're a master's rower, beginner, or pro. These are pure physics, so energy cannot evaporate. So the problem is that, Joscha, you create a lot of force that cannot be transferred into boat speed, that travels back in your body, and the body now activates not just the agonists and of course the corresponding antagonists, but only as much to create motion. It over-activates the antagonists because the energy is gonna travel somewhere and it's gonna be absorbed in something. And you do this by muscle tension, by an excessive muscle tension. And this is not necessary. It could be changed, but just hanging looser, using the upper body at the right point of time. But I will talk about this later on. There are a couple of things you need to tweak and change in order to solve this. As Joscha is moving to the finish, there's not much acceleration going on. If we play this video in live speed, you see at the finish, yes, there is acceleration going on, but not a whole lot. Whoop. Yes, it is, but I don't know. Somehow there's not. And the somehow not, the problem is that basically you don't have a lot of body momentum left. So the hip angle alpha is gone. There's no more powder to shoot. You cannot really add more motion. Additionally, you don't want to use the upper body empty at the finish. And that was a question last time on YouTube. What do you mean with empty body motion? Body motion that has no direct or indirect effect, positive effect on boat speed. Pivoting back at the finish, at a point of time where you don't accelerate the boat anymore, or you don't set up your body, is an empty motion. It is a motion, but it's good for your, beach body, but it's not good to make the boat fast. Joscha avoids this empty motion by simply stopping the upper body pretty early. I don't think you should lean back more, but at different points of time. We'll talk about solution later on. Another problem is on the way forward that the blade height is not sufficient. And this is a standard you set. Either your standard is that your blade is always high enough off the water that you can square it anytime you want, or it's not. And with you, it's not. It's good, but it's not perfect. And this is true for everybody. When it comes to blade work, you have to be a freak. You have to be absolutely perfect. I'm not perfect, but at the moment I have barely any chance to row. But you should be perfect if you want to make it to the top, because blade work has a huge influence on how you move your body and how you set up your body, and therefore on the drive. The blade work during the recovery has, I would say, an effect of about 40% on how well your drive works. Maybe 60%, maybe 40, maybe 30, but a lot. So This is not perfection. At this point of time, yes, you would be able to square, but now not. Your knees bend very, very early. And the question is why? And I think your overall conception is to set up your body, but not to control the boat. I think, and I perceive this with many top athletes, and I consider you to be a top athlete, that you focus more on a very good drive where you use the body well, which is largely, I think, the result of spending a lot of time on static linear ergs or general linear drive ergs, because these things behave a lot different than a boat. So you should be holding the knees a little longer with a 3-4 degree protective angle. Get some tension in your hamstrings. You don't need a lot of tension here, but just sufficient tension that when you start to bend the knees, you should have a little pull on your foot stretchers. And once the knees then move up, you bend the knees, you give in, you get the initiative motion of the boat, and then you can control the boat at your will on the recovery. So you basically accelerated, your body mass sits still, and you pull the boat underneath yourself towards the catch. It's this little element right there that makes or breaks this effect. Right here, hold the knees, get more tension, rock over with your hip, get this thing done now, and wait. Now you should be starting to bend your knees, not before. As a pro athlete, you should be able to get your hip into the right position before you bend your knees. And the right position is the one where you want to end up at the catch anyway. If this is ultimately armpit to hip to legs angle you want to have at the catch, then you can start to bend your knees. This will never be left in race pace, but for steady state and mid-20s stroke rate is steady state, this should be working. This should be your standard. And you see it's not. You move quite a lot forward just before the catch. You change your angle quite a bit in order to get a lot of forward reach. And therefore, you also compromise your lower hip angle. I mean, your back is set up very nicely. And it could be a bit better. And it's not so much about the low back position, it's about the boat control. There's not much boat control going on. And we see the effect of it right here. If we play in live speed, whoop, you see the boat accelerates just before the catch a lot, and at the catch it slows down significantly, way too much. Whoop, should not be the case. Should not be the case. There is also visible acceleration of the boat during the recovery, that's right, but not a consistent one. That's the difference. This is the acceleration some people refer to as exchange of masses. So you basically exchange your body mass with the mass of the boat. So you throw your body mass forward and this accelerates the boat. It could be described as this, but it is not the effect you want to generate, in my opinion. You want to generate a steady control in order not to over-accelerate the boat also during the recovery. That's important. You never want to over-accelerate the boat. You want to have a consistent speed. That's the idea. Rowing fast means consistent speed and not steep acceleration, steep deceleration, acceleration, and so on. You want to avoid this as much as possible. Now, talking about what you mentioned, Joscha, your shoulder stability, that you're using your arms in a weird way in terms of right arm bends, left shoulder goes up. I think this is automated, it's muscle memory, and the intention is a very simple one. You don't want to hurt your hands. It is possible, I don't know your boat setup, but I think you are rowing too much on right hand closer to the body than the left hand. And it should be a mix of both. So it shouldn't be perfectly parallel left over right, and it shouldn't be only right hand closer to the body than left hand. And you alter this, the boat setup, with the overlap left-right. So if your left oarlock, your starboard oarlock is too low in comparison to your right one, which means it's not much higher than your right one, you are likely to end up with arm position that you have right now. I would suggest to get about 6 to 8 millimeters of height difference between left and right oarlock, just for the trial. You know, some people say, oh, you can't row like this. Try it out. The way it works right now doesn't seem to work. If you already have 6 to 8 mil difference between the left and the right oarlock, then I would suggest to change the way you row. And now comes the big point here at the catch. At the catch, you over control, and that's probably the main topic of everything here. You over control the entire hand position. The hand position should be controlled by the blades, not so much by the body. And there are controlling aspects and non-controlling aspects. So first of all, the blade controls. You know, of course, it's not a beautiful blade, but you know what I mean. And second of all, the lat, triceps, and hip with the low back has a lot of control over where your hands are. So we're talking about these babies right here. If you try to control your hands by means of triceps, elbow, and shoulders, you end up at a point where you use way too much arm force just to get the hands at the right position. And this is what's happening, Joscha. I think you're simply overdoing it by means of, I want to keep my hands stable, but at the same time, I don't want to hurt my knuckles. So what you do, you start with the right hand slightly ahead of the left. If you were rowing on a bio rower, I'm pretty sure you would not have the same difference left and right, simply because you would start the drive with your right hand first. You would take away resistance potential from the left hand, because the bio rower gives you feedback also mechanically. You would see the force curves, of course, but if you row on the bio rower and you start with the right hand first, you take away resistance capacity from the left hand, because there's only one resistance unit, which is driven independently, left and right hand. So the left hand will basically trail behind and never feel the same resistance. And Joscha, this is what you need to change. At the catch, hang loose, wait what's happening. Don't try to control your hands with your arms. Try to control your hands with feeling where the blade is. Maybe get a set of random force just to try out and feel it where it should be. And then rely on this, use your hip and use your lat, and just allow the hands to go together. I see this a lot with people in linear arcs, because you try to control the handle without proper shoulder flexibility. And your shoulder flexibility is key in the boat, because the real boat does not move in a straight line. You have two perpendicular motions, two semicircles, traveling around the oarlocks. And this requires not you to pull in straight and outward again, but just to be loose enough to let it happen and wait. These are your shoulders and arms. They don't give in endlessly, but essentially they are shock absorbers and adapt to the boat motion. And this is what I refer to when I say you have to accept and understand what the boat can do and what it cannot do. And what it cannot do is allow a straight pull, which also involves your shoulders to be flexible. I hope this makes sense. You know, you see, when you look at the rower in a true rowing cockpit, you see that there's always a motion that is inward, across, outward. It's never a straight line. But if you try to convey the idea that, hey, also, you know, in the boat I do a straight line, not intentionally, but subconsciously, and in terms of muscle memory, you end up where the body does this. And if you then force your shoulders to stay low, the energy cannot evaporate. It ends up right here. So you have this. And this is also what's happening. And as you have so much energy application in your forearms, you need too much energy just to stabilize the drive. And this is also what may cause problems when you row in rough and bad weather, because you have to control everything and your arms may become wasted too quickly. I may be wrong, but I think this is, Joscha, maybe a problem that you have or had. And this is also the problem solution. Hang loose, look for what's happening here at the catch. When you put your blades in the water, let your arms be the shock absorbers. Wait for what's happening. drive a little longer. Don't do an aggressive pivot. Open the hip angle at a point of time where you can extend the plateau. And on the bi-row, you see this when you open the hip angle, you either get a peak if it's too early, or you extend the plateau if the timing is right. This is how you play around with the technique. And at the finish, I think this is all well. It's not much you need to change, but you will end up in a different way at the finish with more energy connection. So this will feel awkward at the beginning, but it's the right step. Now, a final word on training planning, because you said, okay, you cannot really advance from 623, 620 to 610. And you said you were doing a lot of volume. The thing is, if you do too much volume, you end up or you lose explosiveness. So you need a fine balance between preserving your explosiveness and gaining recovery capacity and regeneration capacity. The main reason why we do low steady state endurance is to allow our body to recover faster between high intensity units. And I don't know your training plan, but I think the basic ideas will probably get the job done. So first of all, structure the season, which means don't do high intensity stuff a lot in winter. I know you guys, with most national teams, it's always the same drama. You have to perform, you have to do 2Ks in winter, which is completely useless because it does not make your athletes faster. I know national team coaches don't like to hear this because they can something improve on paper, say, hey, my athletes are improving, blah, blah, blah. But it's not beneficial to make athletes faster. I just worked for the last 25 years. How would it work if you did not have to test your athletes all winter long? But just on a side note. So in any case, Joscha, I would just do these 2K tests the way they're as part of your training. I would not prepare for specifically. You know? Yes, you run the risk that you may be 3-4 seconds slower, but this is all you're going to lose. If you have a thorough buildup in terms of, I'm going to peak for June, July, August, you'll faster than peaking for every individual test. I would do high intensities starting March, April only, and not in January. And then I would do real intensities. So you do a lot of high intensity, HIT. This is good, but the question is if too much endurance doesn't cost you your capacity to perform in circumstances where you need to be explosive. And what may also be the reason is that you don't have enough alteration. So you follow maybe 3-4 different intensity levels. That may not be enough, because the chances that you do not target the right intensity levels is a pretty good one. Even if you measure lactate every training, you still don't know if that lactate zone is right now is actually the right one you need to target, because the anaerobic threshold actually changes on quite a frequent basis. So what I do with my athletes, we have 11 different training zones exactly for this reason, because you never know if that zone is actually correct. So if you alter a lot, chances are you will be longer or with a higher certainty, at least for some part of the training time, in the beneficial training zone. And secondly, you don't economize so quickly. Joscha, there's a lot more to say, and generally you row extremely well. I think you've done a terrific job to come so far, and I must congratulate you, and I hope this video helps you. If there's anything more I can do for you, please let me know, and I wish you all the best. Yeah. For my community, I hope this video was helpful. I know it's been quite a lot of top athletes at the moment, but this is pretty awesome. All right, ladies and gents, I wish you all the best. Looking forward to see you next time. Go to rmtraining.com and register for the newsletter. Have a good day. Bye-bye.